All right, to give another perspective to the student loan scheme is an education strategist who will be joining us on the telephone this morning. Of course, we heard from Mr. Akitunde Sawyer on the part of NEL Fund. But of course, from another angle, let's take a look, especially those from indigent background. We have joining us now Dr. Gboyega Ilusanya. He's an education strategist. Dr. Ilusanya, good morning. Thank you for joining us via the telephone today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So, Dr. Ilusanya, quickly tell us, we've heard from Mr. Sawyer there from the nation's capital about NEL Fund. For you who in the education sector, how key is this fund coming at this time?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, for me, I think it is really a very big win for the education system of Nigeria, especially the tertiary level at this particular time. Because we are talking about access to tertiary education. And basically, and to be honest, because of the increasing poverty and the reduced disposable income of families, a lot of things are happening within the tertiary education space in which parents are having great difficulty in sustaining their children in tertiary education, even in the federal and the state institutions that are somehow subsidized. So for me, it is coming at a very good time, especially that it is addressing the demand side. The demand side, and I repeat that, the demand side finance of access. Because there is also the supply side issue of access.
Okay.
So for the demand side, which is coming from the beneficiaries, the children, undergraduates who are demanding higher education. So this is unblocking access for them to tertiary education. So, and for me, I think the loan has been responsive because when you look at the initial act signed, which was withdrawn, there are a lot of hindrances. And for them to have come up with this revision, which removes a number of those hindrances, I think it's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
In terms of sorting out the demand side finance, which removes the hindrances and reduces the number of dropouts, because a lot of people are quietly dropping out of tertiary education system, those who enroll, and there are some who couldn't even enroll. They get admission offers, but they couldn't pay because their parents couldn't afford. And so this is like a pathway that allows people to take responsibility, young people to take responsibility for their future.
Okay.
If my father or my mother can't pay for my tertiary education, this loan provides me an opportunity to take responsibility and say, well, I can go ahead, irrespective of the fact that my parents couldn't afford it, but then I want to launch in, take a loan, and then when I earn resources, when I become employable, when I become a better citizen, which is the opportunity that this loan gives, then I can pay back.
Okay.
And I need to say clearly here, my own mother suffered the pain before the Universal Primary Education Scheme. She couldn't go to school. And so she dropped out. So the pain that she had, that she dropped out, became positive for her in making sure that we, our children, went to school.
Okay.
She kept bringing our resources to the table to make sure that we went to school.
Right.
Up to the tertiary education level.
Okay.
And she never did anything for herself except that.
Okay.
Okay, Gboyega, please, I wanted to speak to the fears of ASUU. ASUU have alleged that the federal government, through this student loan, is trying to keep students in permanent debt. Do you think ASUU is being reasonable with that conclusion?
Well, I think it's looking at different sides of this. And I think ASUU is speaking for themselves, but I think more importantly, ASUU needs to look at the supply side of the finance. I think their concern is probably the supply side finance. For instance, the children or the undergraduates that are going to school, if they access this loan, are they going to end up having quality education because our tertiary education system is underfunded?
Okay.
And so because they are underfunded, you probably be accessing loan to continue to access low quality education. in terms of comments that maybe they are trying to impoverish the students, I don't really totally agree. And I think we should allow the beneficiaries, the parents and the students, to be the voice about this on the demand side, and then us to be the voice on the supply side, which is looking at what is exactly the quality of tertiary education system. Do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the system? Do we have the environment to actually deliver quality education? Because when Mr. Soyatu was speaking, he was talking about quality education. So at the end of the day, do we want to have access to loan to continue to access poor quality education? And I think that should or is the concern of ASU. So while we are providing demand side finance, we should also be looking at supply side finance. And I think that is the area in which government has not really done the balancing. Given the fact of the complaints about what our tertiary education system looks like at the moment in terms of quality of what is on offer.
So, as had Mr. Sawyer had also said that during the first phase of the application process, about 600,000 students, have applied into the scheme. And now that the second phase is about to commence, he particularly noted that there has been low response from southwestern states. Does this worry you?
Okay, that there has been low response from the southwestern. I think actually they have 60,000 people who have applied.
60,000?
60,000 in all that have applied. So, okay, what you are telling me now is I said there is low response from the southwestern states.
Right.
Well, I think that might be linked to the fact that in terms of being educationally advanced, and the willingness of parents to be responsible for the education of their children, probably because it is higher in this part of the world. It may be one of the reasons, because in terms of, there is none of the southwestern states that is on the list of educationally disadvantaged states.
True.
So there is an inbuilt, unspoken understanding that you fund your children's education, your child goes to school. But over time, as it goes on, because I am from the southwestern part, I have been engaging with people at level, because every year I see people who drop out, I see people who couldn't pay. So what we've been doing at our level is also to make people to become aware that this opportunity is available, and it is also interest-free. That's the beauty of it. So you don't compound interest even while you are on the phone. But it's likely that, well, because of the fact that southwestern states, people have been able to fund their children's education over time. But obviously, too, there are a lot of people who are actually borrowing money to fund their children's education.
Okay. How does this connect with the quest of government to address the problem of unemployment and youth restiveness in our society?
Hello, sir.
I'm saying that how does this student loan connect with the quest of government in addressing the problem of unemployment and youth restiveness?
Well, I think when you look at the loan also made provision for those who are even entering into TVET, technical and vocational education, not necessarily those who are doing formal education per se. So on the basis of that, I want to say that if awareness is properly created with the youth, it is going to end up being able to minimize the challenge with unemployment with the youth, because it's not looking at those who can actually go into tertiary level alone. There is a window for those who are going to the technical and vocational education institutions. So, and then secondly, you also look at it from the point of view that the youth that are unlikely to have access to education because their parents cannot pay are likely going to now become enrolled and become useful at their youthful age to access education instead of becoming social miscreants. And so the likelihood of increase of people who are miscreants is reduced, and then the likelihood of being employable, provided they are able to access the right skills in the university. And that is where we talk about the supply side finance, so that we don't get people into university again and come out and they are not employable, number one. They are not productive. They are not creative, because not everybody will be employed by government.
Right.
A graduate is expected to be creative. if actually they went through and they had the right quality of education at the tertiary level.
Okay. Boyega, before we allow you go this morning, I'm sure that, of course, many people, especially for those in your sector, do know that countries across the world play large with the Students' Fund, student loan scheme. What are some of the mistakes that you'd like for the NEL Fund not to be involved in for the smooth running of the scheme?
Okay, one of the things that has happened in the developed world, it's about the challenge of recovering the fund. And I think this is about risk mitigation, challenges of recovering the fund. If people take the fund as national cake and they don't pay back, there is a challenge of sustainability down the line. Even though we have a sure source of fund, which is coming from 1% of the federal fund. But part of the challenge will be people taking the loan as national cake, which was what happened in the 70s. People who were sent abroad to go and school with national, with the student loans, didn't pay back, even though they schooled abroad. So I think that is what government needed to, because it's possible that people will access this loan and then they japa, and when they japa, they refuse to pay as well. Whereas they are in a better position to be able to pay. And those are the areas in which government needs to look into about the livelihood of people, because it happened in that of Australia, where it became an incentive for people who travel abroad not to repay the loan, because it was linked to tax payment, your tax returns in Australia. So your repayment is linked to tax return in Australia. And so those who are not living in Australia do not have the obligation to make tax return to the Australian government. And so people who moved out were not paying. So it may also happen here in Nigeria. And one thing we need to understand is that, and the truth about it is that in our state institutions, federal institutions, education is subsidized. We are not paying the true cost. And you can get that by comparing the cost of the same level of education in the public against the private. If you want to do medicine in a private university in Nigeria, you'll be talking about minimum of 4 to 5 million naira per session.
Right.
And here in the public institution, a number of them pay less than 500,000 naira. You understand me? So you get that education with the student loans, and then you disappear abroad, and you are earning good money abroad, and yet you are not paying back. So those are the things that could happen, and that could endanger the scheme. However, I think also, you've not asked me that, I think we need to improve the program as it's going on. I think if we are talking about improving access, we actually need to allow access to private people who choose to go to private institutions. Because 149 private universities in Nigeria, they are enrolling 10% of the 2 million children that are in the university in Nigeria. So I don't think it will be out of place as we move on to continue to improve it, to allow access to those who choose private institutions as their destination, as long as they are able to pay back the loan.
Okay, Boyega, another quick one. Do you think that we have an efficient data system in place to actually ensure the proper repayment process?
I think from what the development that is going on in the country now, the use of NIN, BVN, and what Mr. Sawyer has explained, I think we are having close to good data management system to be able to track this. And the linkage of this with your JAMB registration number. If you are admitted, if you are admitted through JAMB, then you can access. So all those data synchronization, I think they are getting better and might make the system to be much more efficient than those that have failed in the past.
All right. We do thank you sincerely, Boyega Ilusanya, education strategist and MD Wise Daniel Development Consultancy Limited. Thank you so much for your time and expertise on the program today.
Thank you very much.
All right, we've been speaking with Boyega Ilusanya on the students' loan scheme, and so that's the much we will take on the conversation this morning.